Now that I'm done with the floor, I'm going to move on to the cabinets. When I install cabinets, I remove the doors and the shelves. This makes the cabinets very light and easy to maneuver. I saved a lot of money by buying these cabinets unfinished. They came fully put together with all the hardware installed. The cabinets are made of maple, with the face frames and door frames made of solid maple, with the boxes, shelves, and the center panel of the doors made of maple veneer. The boxes are made from 1/2-inch veneered plywood. I'll do a future video on how much money I saved on the cabinets buying them unfinished, and the materials it took and the time to finish them myself. I'm going to make a prop out of 2x4s to hold the cabinet in place during installation. I do set up a laser, which is just for my own benefit, but if you have soffits, you should really push the cabinets up tight to the top of the soffit. Even if the cabinets are slightly out of level, it should go tight to the soffit. I mean, you're not going to have it that far out of level, so you want to keep the gap as tight as possible. My soffits aren't perfect because I chose to just add to them because they were original from the house. I should have torn them out and redone them because they were a little off, but not enough to make that big of a deal. I've just primered the walls only, not painted, so the marks for my studs on the drywall are still visible. So I'll measure over to my first known stud and transfer those over to the cabinet and pre-drill all my holes for installing them. You'll see I'm measuring over 3/4 first. That's going to act as my filler. I intend to put a 3/4 inch wide filler after I install and paint the cabinets. You'll also know I marked the front face frame. This will help when I go to mark the studs inside the cabinet to pre-drill them. Here I'm using a 3/4 piece of flooring to represent my filler. For the next cabinet, I measure over from the side to the next stud, and then I'll transfer those over to the interior of the cabinet and pre-drill the holes. When measuring over, I have to allow for the space between each cabinet for the face frames. Transferring my measurements this way is very accurate. Where I'm bumping the tape measure is the inside of the cabinet. Now I'll move my cabinet prop over, set the cabinet on the prop, and clamp the two cabinets together. Next, I make sure the face frames are lined up. Before I screw the cabinet to the wall, I'll make sure the face frames are lined up and then screw them together. Maple's a very hard wood, so you have to pre-drill the holes and countersink as well. I'm using a 2-inch screw, so I'm going to extend the drill bit on my countersink to 2 inches. The countersink I have has a tapered drill bit, so as it gets to the end, it gets tighter. That's why I can extend the bit out the full 2 inches. I tried to leave the drill bit about 1/8 inch shorter than 2 inches, however the screw head snapped off. So now I have to extend the drill bit out the full 2 inches.
2 of them.
You'll see here I'm backing the drill bit back out and in to clear the chips away. If you don't do this, the drill bit will overheat and snap inside the wood.
Hard ass wood.
Screwing the face frames together is very important. This keeps the two cabinets aligned together after you screw it to the wall.
Didn't like that.
Oh, so you're going to finish it when it's like up there?
Yes.
When I screw the face frames together, I put one at the top and the bottom in the middle of the cabinet. Here I'm just making sure the face frames are lined up before I screw them together. I kind of did this a little backwards. I should have went from top to bottom or bottom to top, meaning I should have done the top screw, the middle screw, and the bottom screw. It would have been a lot easier to line the face frames up working that way. Now that the face frames are together, I can prop the cabinet up all the way tight to the soffit and screw it to the wall. When installing my upper cabinets, I only install the top screws first until I'm done installing the cabinets. This helps to make any adjustments when I'm bolting the cabinets together. Once they're all together and all the top screws are in, I'll go back, pre-drill the holes, and install the bottom screws. Before I start the base cabinets, I install all the doors back on the upper cabinets. Before I set up my laser, I'll double check the height of the cabinets. Then I'll mark the measurement on the wall. Then I'll set the laser up and bring the line down to that mark. Now I'll check to see where the high or low spots are. It looks like my high spot's going to be in the original corner where I set the mark. So that's where I'm going to start my first cabinet. And with the laser, all I have to do is shim my cabinets up to that laser line. Same as the upper, I'll use a piece of 3/4 to set for my space for my filler strip. And that's where I'll screw the cabinet to the wall. Here I'm going to readjust my laser line. Here you can see where I've adjusted my laser line to. Here I'm checking for high spots in the front of the cabinet, which is 2 foot away from the wall. The floors could be running uphill. Mine do run uphill a little bit, so I'll make some adjustments. Now I'll start raising the cabinets to the laser line and install them to the wall. Now, so I can see the laser line in the front of the cabinet as well as the back, I lift the front of the cabinet so it's just touching the laser line, and this allows me to split the laser line. By splitting the laser line, that allows me to see the line in the front and the back of the cabinet. Here I'll use a shim to check that line. And you can see here I need to lift this corner up a little bit. And now you can see the line is just touching the cabinet.
There, and a line in back. That's splitting.
And you can see here I can still see it across the back of the cabinet. Now I'll do the same thing as I did to the top. I'll remove the drawers and doors so I can clamp them together. Also, I will screw the boxes together before I screw them to the wall. The boss decided to give me a hand here. Now I'm setting up a couple of lasers to mark where the edge and the top of my cabinet are. And I'll measure from those lines to get all my hole cutouts for the valves and the drains and the outlets. I kind of screwed up here. I should have started with the cabinet that goes right underneath the one next to the stove and then measure from the cabinet instead of using a laser line on the side. And because that didn't line up right, I hacked up the inside of the sink cabinet with all my cutouts because I was off 3/4 of an inch. I take all my measurements from the laser line. Never take them from the floor. Always take them from a level line that you've drawn for the top of the cabinet or a laser line. If I was to measure from the floor, I'd have to deduct for shimming or whatever, so it's best just to take it from the level line. When I measure down from the line, I write all my measurements on the wall for every cutout. I don't need to write them on a piece of paper because my cabinet is right next to where I'm working, so I'll just transfer those lines off the wall onto the cabinet. Now I'll take all my measurements from left to right. That's where the next cabinet's going to be. And as a reminder, I should have installed that cabinet first. That would have ensured me lining it up with the cabinet above and not having to move everything over 3/4 of an inch. Now I sit the cabinet as it will go onto the wall and start transferring my numbers from the wall to the cabinet. Now I'll use several hole saws, a drill bit, and a jigsaw to cut out the openings. Now when I'm drilling with the hole saws, I'm going to just drill far enough in for the pilot hole to break through to the inside of the cabinet. That's how the hole saw doesn't pop through and tear up the inside of the cabinet. Once I get them all started, I'll move around to the other side and drill them from the inside of the cabinet. You can see here how the pilot hole just tore up the cabinet. Now you can see how nice and neat the hole is from drilling on this side. I will say one thing about the unfinished cabinets. The veneer is not very thick. It's paper thin and it's not glued on very well, so it kind of tears off the back of the plywood. Now here's where the two cabinets didn't line up correctly, and I had to recut some of the openings so I can move the cabinet over 3/4 of an inch. This is where the stove and the microwave go, and you want those two cabinets to line up with each other. Because it's my cabinet, I'm not going to worry about it too much, but if it does bother you that the holes are off, or it's for somebody that you're getting paid from to do it, then all you'd have to do is buy a piece of board and make a new back for it and just put it over the existing back. Now I haven't installed the island cabinets yet. I'm missing a cabinet that goes in the middle of those two there. So once I get those, I'll install the island. My next step is to sand, stain, and spray the cabinets.